Welcome, listeners, to another journey into the often overlooked, yet utterly fascinating, corners of history. Tonight, we delve beneath the grand marble facades and monumental arches of ancient Rome, past the bustling forums and the thunderous roar of the Colosseum, to explore something far more fundamental, something that truly defined the everyday existence of its citizens, from the lowliest plebeian to the most powerful senator. We are going to explore the surprisingly complex world of ancient Roman plumbing. Now you might be thinking, plumbing, for a sleep podcast, how can something so mundane possibly hold our attention, let alone lull us into a restful state? And to that, I would say precisely. It is in these very mundane details, these seemingly insignificant elements of daily life, that the true genius and sheer scale of Roman ambition become most apparent. This wasn't merely about pipes and drains. It was about public health, urban planning, social stratification, and an unprecedented mastery of engineering that in many ways would not be matched for over a millennium. Forget the grandeur of conquest for a moment and consider the grandeur of ensuring millions of people had access to clean water, day in and day out. That, my friends, is a monumental achievement. Our journey begins naturally with the source, the water itself. For centuries, before Rome became the sprawling metropolis we envision, its inhabitants relied on the Tiber River, local springs, and rainwater cisterns. This worked well enough for a smaller, agrarian settlement, but as Rome grew, as its population swelled into the hundreds of thousands, and eventually over 1 million, these traditional sources became woefully inadequate. The water was often contaminated, especially the Tiber, which doubled as a sewer. Disease was rampant. The very expansion of the city was predicated on solving this fundamental problem: how to bring vast quantities of clean, fresh water from distant sources into the heart of the urban sprawl. The solution, of course, was the aqueduct. The word itself conjures images of majestic stone arches spanning valleys, a testament to Roman ingenuity. And while those arches are undeniably iconic, they represent only a fraction of the aqueduct system. The vast majority of these conduits ran underground, snaking through hills, tunneling beneath obstacles, and flowing through carefully constructed channels. This subterranean approach was not only more secure from potential enemies, but also maintained a more consistent temperature for the water and reduced evaporation. It was a network of invisible veins, quietly pulsing with life-giving water, hidden beneath the very ground the Romans walked upon. The first Roman aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, was constructed in 312 BC. This was the same year that the Via Appia, the famous Appian Way, began construction. It's no coincidence. Both projects were championed by the censor Appius Claudius Caecus, a man of remarkable vision who understood that infrastructure was the bedrock of empire. The Aqua Appia was almost entirely underground, running for about 4 kilometers, or roughly 10 miles, from springs in the Alban Hills to the cattle market in Rome. Its existence immediately transformed public hygiene and convenience, though its capacity was still relatively modest by later standards. Imagine, if you will, the sheer audacity of the concept in the 4th century BC. There was no modern surveying equipment, no advanced calculus as we understand it today. Yet Roman engineers, drawing upon centuries of practical knowledge, understood the principles of gravity and gradient with astonishing precision. They knew that water flows downhill, but they also understood that the slope had to be gentle enough to prevent erosion and structural damage, yet steep enough to maintain a continuous flow. Achieving this over many miles, often through irregular terrain, required meticulous planning and execution. The gradient of many Roman aqueducts was incredibly slight, sometimes dropping just a few centimeters over 100 meters. This precision allowed for a steady, reliable flow of water, minimizing turbulence and pressure variations. The construction of an aqueduct was a monumental undertaking, requiring immense resources and manpower. Surveyors, known as librators, would meticulously plot the route, using simple but effective tools like the chorobates, a long wooden beam with legs and a water channel on top to check levels, or the dioptra, a sort of early theodolite. Once the route was established, thousands of laborers, often soldiers or slaves, would begin the arduous work of digging trenches, quarrying stone, and laying the conduits. These conduits, or specus, were typically lined with waterproof concrete, known as opus signinum, a mixture of lime, sand, and crushed pottery. This lining was crucial for preventing leaks and preserving water quality. The aqueducts were not just single channels. They often incorporated a series of structures to manage the flow. Sedimentation tanks, or piscini limeri, were built at various points along the route. These large basins allowed impurities and sediment to settle out of the water before it continued its journey, ensuring a cleaner supply when it reached the city. This foresight in water purification, even at a basic level, speaks volumes about the Roman understanding of public health. They might not have known about germs, but they certainly understood that muddy, stagnant water was detrimental. As the Roman Republic grew into an empire, so too did its aqueduct system. By the 1st century AD, Rome was served by 9 major aqueducts, with others added later, bringing an astonishing volume of water into the city. Some estimates suggest that at its peak, Rome's aqueduct system delivered over 1 million cubic meters of water per day. To put that into perspective, that's enough water to fill approximately 400 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single day. This vast supply supported not only domestic use, but also the elaborate public baths, fountains, and even the naumatia, the simulated naval battles held in flooded arenas. The availability of water was a defining characteristic of Roman urban life, setting it apart from virtually any other city in the ancient world. The engineering challenges were immense. Rivers had to be crossed, valleys spanned, and hills tunneled through. When a valley was too deep to simply build an underground channel, or when the terrain required the water to maintain a high elevation, the famous arcaded bridges were constructed. These multi-tiered arches, like the Pont du Gard in France or the Aqua Claudia near Rome, are still breathtaking in their scale and beauty. They were not merely functional, they were also symbols of Roman power and mastery over nature. Each arch was precisely calculated to bear the immense weight of the water channel above, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of load-bearing structures. The precision with which stones were cut and fitted together, often without mortar in the lower sections, ensured the longevity of these structures, many of which still stand today, millennia later. The construction method for these arches involved temporary wooden frameworks, known as centring, which supported the stones until the keystone was placed, locking the arch into a self-supporting structure. Once the keystone was in place, the wooden framework could be removed, and the arch would stand independently. This method, while ingenious, was labor-intensive and required skilled stonemasons and engineers. It was a testament to the organizational capabilities of the Roman state, able to mobilize and direct vast numbers of people and resources towards these monumental public works. The construction process was often a continuous undertaking, with repairs and new additions being made as the city expanded and older conduits deteriorated. Maintenance crews were constantly at work, inspecting the channels for leaks, clearing out sediment, and repairing damaged sections. This ongoing commitment to infrastructure upkeep was just as important as the initial construction. Without vigilant maintenance, the entire system would quickly fall into disrepair, rendering the initial investment useless. It was a cycle of building, using, and maintaining, a testament to the long-term vision of Roman urban planners. And so the water flowed day and night, silently traversing miles of engineered pathways, overcoming gravity and geography to quench the thirst of a mighty empire. But once this precious resource arrived within the city walls, where did it go? How was it distributed? And how did it eventually leave the city? These are the questions that will guide our exploration in the segments to come. For now, let us reflect on the marvel of the aqueduct, the very foundation of Rome's hydraulic success, and the quiet testament to an engineering prowess that continues to impress, even in our modern age. The journey of water into Rome was an epic in itself, a tale of stone and gravity, bringing life to a city built on ambition. And it is this quiet epic that sets the stage for everything that followed in the complex world of Roman plumbing. So, the water, having faithfully traversed miles of meticulously engineered aqueducts, finally arrived at the precipice of the bustling Roman metropolis. But its journey didn't end there. Upon reaching the city, the aqueduct's main channel discharged into a large, often monumental, distribution tank known as a castellum divisorium, or simply a castellum. These castella were strategically placed at high points within the city, typically on hills or at the end of the aqueduct lines, leveraging gravity once again to distribute the water effectively throughout Rome's dense urban fabric. Imagine these castella as the primary arteries of Rome's water system within the city. They were not merely simple reservoirs. They were often elaborate structures, sometimes adorned with decorative facades, serving as visible testaments to the city's wealth and its mastery over water. From these primary castella, the water would then flow into a network of smaller, secondary castella, located at lower elevations or in different districts. This hierarchical distribution system allowed for pressure management and localized control over the water supply, ensuring that every corner of the city could potentially benefit from the life-giving flow. Within the castella, a sophisticated, though in some ways controversial, system of distribution was employed. The tank typically had 3 main outlets, each at a slightly different level. The highest outlet supplied water to the numerous public fountains and troughs, lacus and labra, that dotted the Roman streetscape. The middle outlet directed water to the public baths, those grand complexes that were so central to Roman social life. And finally, the lowest outlet provided water to private consumers, those wealthy individuals or businesses who paid a fee for a direct connection to the water supply. This tiered system meant that in times of drought or reduced flow, the public fountains and baths, considered essential for general welfare and hygiene, would receive water first. Private users would be the first to have their supply curtailed, a clear indication of Rome's public-first policy when it came to its most vital resource. The public fountains, or lacus, were ubiquitous. They were far more than mere utilitarian spigots. They were often beautifully designed, featuring elaborate sculptures, carvings, and even small temples. They served as communal gathering points, places where citizens could fill their buckets and jars for domestic use, exchange news, and simply cool off in the Roman heat. For the vast majority of Rome's population, who lived in multi-story apartment buildings insulae, without individual plumbing, these public fountains were their sole source of fresh water. A typical Roman street might have several of these fountains, ensuring that no citizen was ever too far from a reliable water source. The constant flow of water in these fountains was not wasteful. It was deliberate, ensuring freshness and preventing stagnation, and the overflow was often channeled into the city's drainage system. Beyond the lacus, smaller troughs known as labra were often found. These were simpler basins, usually stone, designed for hand washing or for animals to drink. They contributed to the overall cleanliness of the public spaces and reflected the Roman emphasis on practical amenities. It's easy for us, with our modern indoor plumbing, to overlook the sheer convenience and public health benefits these widespread access points provided. Imagine a city where clean water was readily available on almost every street corner, day and night, for anyone to use. This was a privilege almost unheard of in the ancient world. The water was delivered from the casella to these various outlets through an extensive network of pipes. The primary pipes were typically made of lead, a material chosen for its malleability and durability, allowing it to be easily shaped and joined. These pipes, known as fistulae, varied in diameter from small personal connections to large mains. They were laid beneath the streets, often at considerable depth, protected from damage and freezing. The joining of lead pipes was done by soldering, a process that required skilled plumbers known as plumbare. The very word plumbing derives from the Latin plumbum, meaning lead, a direct legacy of Roman water infrastructure. The use of lead, of course, has been a subject of much debate in modern times, given our understanding of lead poisoning. There's no doubt that chronic exposure to lead can have serious health consequences. However, the extent to which lead pipes contributed to widespread lead poisoning in ancient Rome is a complex issue, and one that continues to be researched. Factors such as the high mineral content of the water in some areas, which could cause a protective layer of calcium carbonate to form inside the pipes, thus limiting lead leaching, are often cited. Additionally, the constant flow of water, especially in public fountains, meant water wasn't sitting stagnant in the pipes for long periods. Nevertheless, it remains a fascinating, if somewhat unsettling, aspect of their advanced system. We will delve deeper into the intricacies and potential health implications of Roman lead pipes in a later segment. But for now, suffice it to say, they were the material of choice for the intricate web of city-wide distribution. The sheer volume of water flowing into Rome supported not just basic needs, but also a culture of cleanliness and leisure. It enabled the construction of public latrines, which were often elaborate, multi-seated facilities, sometimes even featuring heated seats in the more luxurious establishments. These latrines relied on a constant flow of water to flush waste into the city's sewers. They were not merely functional, they were often social spaces, where Romans would gather to conduct business or simply chat while attending to their needs. The flowing water beneath them also helped to mitigate odors, making them far more pleasant than typical ancient sanitation facilities. Furthermore, this abundance of water fueled the proliferation of private homes with direct water connections. While most Romans relied on public fountains, the wealthy elite could afford the luxury of having water piped directly into their homes, supplying private fountains, cisterns, and even small baths or lavatories. This was a clear status symbol, showcasing a family's prosperity and influence. The arrangement for private connections was carefully regulated by the authorities. An individual would apply for a fistula, a pipe connection, and the size of the pipe, which determined the amount of water supplied, would be carefully controlled. The water commissioner or curator aquarum oversaw these allocations, ensuring fairness and preventing unauthorized connections, which were, unsurprisingly, a persistent problem. The water commissioner was an incredibly important figure. Sextus Julius Frontinus, a distinguished Roman general, governor, and senator, served as curator aquarum in the late 1st century AD. His surviving treatise, De Aqueductu Urbis Romi, or On the Water Supply of the City of Rome, is an invaluable source of information on the aqueducts and their administration. Frontinus meticulously documented the history, capacity, and management of Rome's aqueduct system, providing insights into the challenges of preventing theft, ensuring equitable distribution, and maintaining such a vast and complex infrastructure. His work highlights the highly organized, almost bureaucratic, approach the Romans took to their water supply, demonstrating that it was considered a matter of critical state importance. The ability to command such vast quantities of water and to distribute it so widely and efficiently cemented Rome's status as a preeminent urban center. It fostered a level of public health and amenity that was unparalleled in the ancient world and indeed, for many centuries afterward. The constant sound of flowing water, from monumental fountains to humble street taps, would have been an integral part of the Roman soundscape, a soothing background hum that signified prosperity and civilization. This widespread access to clean water not only improved sanitation, but also allowed for the creation of beautiful public spaces, lush gardens, and most famously the grand public baths, which will be our next focus. The water had arrived, it was distributed, and now it was ready to serve the very heart of Roman communal life. With a seemingly endless supply of fresh water flowing into the city, Rome was able to support one of its most defining institutions, the public baths. Far more than mere places for hygiene, the Roman thermae, the larger imperial complexes, and the smaller, more numerous balnae, private or neighborhood baths, were the vibrant social, cultural, and recreational epicenters of Roman life. They were places where rich and poor, senator and slave, could mingle, exercise, conduct business, gossip, and of course get clean. For many Romans, a daily visit to the baths was as essential as their morning bread. Imagine stepping into one of these vast complexes, perhaps the baths of Caracalla or Diocletian. The sheer scale would have been overwhelming. These were not just single buildings. They were sprawling campuses encompassing not only bathing rooms but also gymnasia, libraries, lecture halls, gardens, shops, and even art galleries. The daily routine at the baths was a ritual, a structured progression through various temperatures and activities designed to cleanse both body and mind. Upon entering, a Roman citizen would first proceed to the apoditerium, the changing room. Here they would disrobe, their clothes carefully placed in niches in the walls or entrusted to a slave. Theft was a common concern, so keeping an eye on one's belongings or having a trusted attendant was paramount. This space was often simple but functional, serving as the gateway to the bathing experience. From the apoditerium, many bathers would head to the palestra, an open-air exercise ground. Before the cleansing process, it was common to engage in physical activity. This might involve wrestling, lifting weights, playing ball games, or simply running. The purpose was to work up a sweat, opening the pores and preparing the body for the heat of the baths. After exercising, bathers would often cover themselves in olive oil, which would then be scraped off with a strigil, a curved metal instrument, removing dirt, sweat, and dead skin. This ritual of oiling and scraping was a core part of the cleansing process, preceding the actual immersion in water. Next came a series of heated rooms, each progressively warmer. The first stop was typically the tepidarium, or warm room. As its name suggests, this room offered a mild, pleasant warmth, serving as a transitional space between the cooler palestra and the intense heat to come. Bathers would relax here, acclimating their bodies to the rising temperatures, perhaps engaging in quiet conversation or simply unwinding. The air would be humid, gently caressing the skin, preparing it for the more intense heat of the caldarium. The caldarium, the hot room, was the heart of the Roman bathing experience. This was a large, often circular or rectangular, chamber filled with hot, humid air. In the center or along the walls, there would typically be a large, often circular, hot water bath or plunge pool. The heat in the caldarium was intense, designed to induce profuse sweating, further cleansing the pores. Bathers would spend time here, soaking in the hot water, sweating out impurities, and often engaging in vigorous conversation, as the caldarium was a social hub. The air would be thick with steam, and the sounds of splashing water and murmuring voices would fill the space. For those seeking even more intense heat, some baths included a laconicum or a sudatorium. The laconicum was a dry sweating room, similar to a modern sauna, with intense, dry heat. The sudatorium was a moist sweating room, akin to a steam bath. These rooms provided an even more profound cleansing experience, pushing the body to sweat out toxins and truly open the pores. The contrast between the dry and moist heat offered options for different preferences and health benefits. After enduring the heat, the final and most invigorating step was the frigidarium, the cold room. This large hall contained a cold plunge pool, a stark contrast to the preceding hot rooms. Immersion in the cold water served to close the pores, invigorate the body, and stimulate circulation. It was a refreshing shock to the system, leaving the bather feeling revitalized and clean. Some larger baths even included outdoor cold water swimming pools or natations, allowing for more extensive swimming. The genius behind these heated rooms was the hypocaust system, a remarkable feat of Roman engineering. This was a form of underfloor heating where hot air, generated by a furnace prefernium outside the bathing rooms, circulated through channels or cavities beneath the raised floors, suspensuri, and sometimes up through flues in the walls. The floors were supported by pillars of bricks or tiles, typically around 60 centimeters high, creating a void through which the hot air and smoke could pass. This radiant heat warmed the floor and walls, turning the entire room into a giant, gentle heating element. The same heat also warmed water in large tanks, which then fed the hot baths in the caldarium. The efficiency of this system allowed for very large spaces to be heated effectively and economically, making the grand thermi possible. The fuel for these furnaces was primarily wood. Maintaining the hypocaust system required a constant supply of timber and a dedicated staff of stokers. The smoke and heat from the furnaces would eventually escape through chimneys, often integrated into the architectural design of the baths. The constant burning of wood and the management of ash were significant logistical challenges, but they were deemed a necessary cost for the benefits the baths provided. Beyond the physical cleansing, the baths served as crucial social centers. They were places for business meetings, political discussions, literary readings, and casual socializing. Roman writers and philosophers often met friends and colleagues at the baths. Emperors and elites sponsored baths not only as public benefactions, but also as spaces to gauge public opinion and maintain popularity. News spread through the baths, alliances were forged, and reputations were made or broken. The sounds of splashing water, chatter, laughter, and even the occasional argument would have filled these spaces, creating a lively and dynamic atmosphere. The imperial baths, such as the baths of Titus, Trajan, Caracalla, and Diocletian, were particularly extravagant. These complexes were enormous, covering many acres, and were lavishly decorated with marble, mosaics, sculptures, and frescoes. They were symbols of Rome's power and wealth, providing amenities that would not be seen again on such a scale until much later periods in history. The baths of Caracalla, for instance, could accommodate over 1,600 bathers at a time and featured vast halls with vaulted ceilings, intricate floor patterns, and towering columns. They were as much works of art and architecture as they were functional spaces. Even the smaller, private balcony played a vital role in local communities. While less opulent, they offered similar services on a more intimate scale, catering to specific neighborhoods or even individual families in some cases. Their presence ensured that the bathing ritual was accessible to virtually everyone in Roman society, regardless of wealth or status. This widespread access to personal hygiene, coupled with the social benefits, undoubtedly contributed to a healthier and more integrated urban population. The water that flowed into these baths was not stagnant. A continuous supply of fresh water from the aqueducts fed the various pools, and the overflow was constantly drained into the city's sewer system. This constant circulation prevented the water from becoming overly dirty or breeding grounds for disease. The sheer volume of water required to maintain these vast complexes, ensuring fresh fills and constant flow, underscores the absolute necessity of the aqueduct system. Without it, the grandeur and daily function of the Roman baths would have been utterly impossible. From the aqueduct's arrival to the casella's distribution, and now to the thermes cleansing, the water's journey within Rome facilitated a way of life that was truly unique in the ancient world. And after its refreshing visit to the baths, this water still had a destination: the hidden depths of the city's drainage system. Having explored the meticulous supply and distribution of water throughout Rome, from the distant aqueducts to the grand public baths, we now turn our attention to the less glamorous, yet equally vital, aspect of Roman plumbing: waste removal. For a city as densely populated and as reliant on water as Rome, an efficient drainage system was not merely a convenience. It was an absolute necessity for public health and urban functionality. And at the heart of this system lay the legendary Cloaca Maxima. The Cloaca Maxima, meaning greatest sewer, is perhaps the most famous example of Roman engineering in sanitation. Its origins predate the Republic, tracing back to the early days of the Roman kingdom, traditionally attributed to the Etruscan kings in the 6th century BC. Initially, it was an open channel, designed to drain the marshy lowlands between Rome's hills, particularly the area that would become the Roman Forum, making it suitable for habitation and public assembly. Over centuries, as Rome grew and developed, this open channel was progressively covered and expanded, eventually becoming a massive, arched underground conduit. Imagine this colossal structure, a subterranean river flowing beneath the very foundations of Rome. At its largest, the main channel of the Cloaca Maxima was over 3 meters wide and 4 meters high in some sections, large enough for a cart, or even a small boat to pass through. It was constructed with massive, precisely cut blocks of tufa, and later concrete and brick, forming sturdy arches that could withstand the immense pressure of the city above. This robust construction allowed it to endure for over 2.5 millennia, a testament to Roman building techniques. The primary function of the Cloaca Maxima, and the network of smaller sewers that fed into it, was to carry away rainwater runoff, overflow from public fountains and baths, and waste from public latrines. It's important to clarify a common misconception. The Roman sewer system was not primarily designed for direct household sewage from individual homes, at least not in the way our modern systems are. Most private homes, even those of the wealthy, did not have direct connections for human waste. Instead, chamber pots were common, and their contents were often emptied into street gutters or directly into middens, which then relied on rainwater or overflow from fountains to wash away the waste into the nearest drain. However, public latrines were a different story. These communal facilities, often found within bath complexes or as standalone structures, were designed to be flushed by a continuous flow of water. The overflow from the public baths, or dedicated water channels, would run beneath the rows of seating in the latrines, carrying away the waste into the main sewer lines. This constant flushing action was crucial for maintaining a relatively clean and odor-free environment in these public spaces, a stark contrast to the conditions in many other ancient cities. The sheer volume of water provided by the aqueducts was essential for this flushing mechanism, demonstrating the interconnectedness of Rome's water supply and its waste removal system. The network of smaller sewers, or cloacae, branched out from the main cloaca maxima, collecting water and waste from various parts of the city. These smaller drains were often constructed with less robust materials, sometimes simply brick or stone-lined channels, but they all ultimately fed into the larger arterial system. The gradients of these sewers, while not as precise as the aqueducts, were carefully calculated to ensure a continuous flow, preventing blockages and stagnation. The constant influx of fresh water from the aqueducts, particularly the overflow from fountains and baths, acted as a natural flushing mechanism, regularly scouring the sewer channels and carrying waste towards the Tiber River. The ultimate destination of the Cloaca Maxima was the Tiber River, where it discharged its contents. While this might seem unsanitary by modern standards, it was a significant improvement over allowing waste to accumulate in the streets or in open cesspits within the city. The river's current would then carry the waste downstream, away from the populated areas of Rome. The environmental impact on the Tiber itself was undoubtedly significant, but for the inhabitants of Rome, it meant a much cleaner and healthier urban environment. Maintenance of the sewer system was an ongoing and unpleasant task. Specialized workers, known as cloacae, were responsible for inspecting, cleaning, and repairing the sewers. This would have involved navigating the dark, foul-smelling tunnels, clearing blockages, and reinforcing weakened sections. It was dangerous work, fraught with the risks of disease, noxious gases, and structural collapse. Yet their efforts were crucial for the continuous functioning of the city. The Romans understood that a healthy city required not only clean water coming in, but also efficient removal of waste going out. The Cloaca Maxima was not just a marvel of engineering, it was also a symbol. It represented Rome's ability to control its environment, to transform marshland into fertile ground, and to manage the challenges of urban living on an unprecedented scale. It was a testament to their practical genius and their commitment to public works. While less visually impressive than the Colosseum or the Pantheon, its silent, subterranean work was arguably just as fundamental to Rome's enduring success. The very existence of the Forum, the heart of Roman public life, was made possible by the initial drainage efforts of the Cloaca Maxima. Over time, as the city continued to expand and the water supply grew, the sewer system also adapted and expanded. New branch lines were added, and existing ones were repaired or upgraded. The Romans understood the concept of an integrated urban system, where water supply, drainage, and public amenities were all interconnected and interdependent. The failure of one part of the system could have cascading effects on the others. This holistic approach to urban infrastructure was a hallmark of Roman planning. The legacy of the Cloaca Maxima extends far beyond ancient Rome. Its principles of gravity-fed drainage and robust construction influenced later sewer systems throughout Europe. Even today, parts of the original Cloaca Maxima are still in use, carrying rainwater and some modern sewage, a truly astonishing feat of longevity. It stands as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most impactful innovations are those that work quietly beneath the surface, enabling the visible splendor and daily life of a civilization. Consider the contrast with other ancient cities. Many relied on open drains or simply allowed waste to accumulate, leading to terrible odors, rampant disease, and generally unsanitary conditions. Rome, with its sophisticated aqueduct and sewer system, offered a significantly higher quality of urban life in terms of public hygiene. This allowed for greater population density and a more vibrant urban culture, as the risks associated with large gatherings and close living were somewhat mitigated by the advanced sanitation. The story of Roman plumbing, therefore, is not just about pipes and water. It's about the very fabric of Roman society. It's about how they managed resources, how they organized labor, and how they prioritized public welfare, even if that welfare was often intertwined with displays of imperial power and wealth. The silent flow of water through the aqueducts, into the fountains and baths, and then out through the sewers, was the constant rhythm of Roman urban life, a rhythm that allowed a sprawling empire to thrive. And as we consider the silent depths of the Cloaca Maxima, we are reminded that even the most unglamorous aspects of history can reveal profound insights into the ingenuity and priorities of past civilizations. The water had arrived, served its purpose, and now it was efficiently dispatched, completing its journey through the Roman hydraulic marvel. Having explored the grand public works of Roman water management, the majestic aqueducts, the omnipresent fountains, and the capacious baths, all culminating in the vast, subterranean Cloaca Maxima, it's easy to imagine a perfectly egalitarian system. However, the reality of Roman water distribution, like much of Roman society, was far from uniformly distributed. While public access to water was indeed widespread and a remarkable achievement, the luxury of private water connections was a privilege reserved for the wealthy elite, a distinct marker of status and influence. For the vast majority of Rome's inhabitants, the public fountains remained their primary source of water. Imagine the daily routine: a trip to the nearest lacus with buckets and amphorae, perhaps multiple times a day, to collect water for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. This was a communal chore, a constant rhythm of urban life for those living in the crowded multi-story insulae. But for the affluent, a different, more convenient reality existed. Wealthy Roman households, particularly those with sprawling villas and expansive urban dwellings, could apply for a direct connection to the city's water supply. This meant having water piped directly into their homes, a luxury that eliminated the need for daily trips to the public fountains and enabled the creation of private amenities. Small domestic fountains, private latrines, and even personal balcony or bathing rooms, a smaller version of the public baths for exclusive use. This was not a right but a granted privilege, managed by the curator aquarum and often tied to property ownership and social standing. The process for obtaining a private water supply involved a formal application and the payment of a fee. Once approved, a pipe, typically made of lead, would be branched off a public main and directed to the private property. The size of this connecting pipe, known as a fistula, was crucial, as it determined the volume of water supplied. The curator aquarum maintained meticulous records of these private connections, including the names of the property owners and the dimensions of their fistulae. These pipes were often stamped with the names of the emperor, the curator aquarum, or the property owner, serving as official seals and markers of legitimate connection. The material of choice for these private fistulae, and indeed for much of the internal city distribution, was lead. This decision was based on lead's admirable qualities for the task. It is highly malleable, easily shaped into pipes and bends without cracking. It is relatively resistant to corrosion, and it can be easily joined by soldering. Roman plumbers, the plumbari, were skilled artisans who would cut lead sheets, bend them into cylindrical pipes, and then fuse the seams using lead solder. The joints between pipe sections were often made by flaring one end and inserting the other, then sealing with solder, creating remarkably durable connections. The technology was impressive for its time, allowing for complex routing of water within buildings and across properties. However, the widespread use of lead brings us to a significant and often debated aspect of Roman plumbing: the potential for lead poisoning. Our modern understanding of toxicology confirms that chronic exposure to lead, even in small amounts, can have detrimental effects on health, including neurological damage, kidney problems, and anemia. Given the Roman reliance on lead pipes, the question naturally arises: did the Romans suffer from widespread lead poisoning, and could it have contributed to the decline of the empire? This is a complex question with no simple answer. While some scholars argue for a significant impact, pointing to high lead levels found in Roman skeletal remains and ice cores from Greenland, others present a more nuanced picture. Several factors might have mitigated the effects. Firstly, the high calcium carbonate content of much of the water supplied to Rome from its aqueducts naturally led to the formation of a protective layer, or scale, inside the lead pipes. This layer, a form of limescale, would act as a barrier, preventing direct contact between the water and the lead, thereby reducing the leaching of lead into the water. If the water was hard, as much of Rome's was, this scaling effect would have provided a natural defense. Secondly, the constant flow of water, especially in public fountains, meant that water rarely sat stagnant in lead pipes for extended periods. Stagnant water is more likely to leach lead. Private homes, however, where water might sit overnight in pipes leading to a household cistern or fountain, could have experienced higher concentrations. Nevertheless, the overall system was designed for continuous movement, which limited contact time. Thirdly, Romans were also exposed to lead from other sources: leaded wine, lead-based cosmetics, lead cooking pots, and lead glazes on pottery. It's difficult to isolate the exact contribution of water pipes versus these other sources. While lead poisoning likely affected some individuals, particularly the wealthy who had more extensive private lead pipe networks and greater exposure to other lead-containing products, the idea that it caused widespread cognitive decline across the general population or significantly contributed to the fall of Rome is largely speculative and debated. It's an intriguing historical puzzle, but the engineering achievement of the lead pipe system itself remains undeniable, despite its potential health drawbacks. Beyond the plumbing, the wealthy Romans often had private water tanks, or casella privata, on their estates. These functioned similarly to the public casella, receiving water from a main fistula, and then distributing it to various points within the villa or property. This allowed for greater control and pressure regulation for the numerous fountains, ponds, and garden features that were hallmarks of elite Roman residences. These private systems required their own maintenance, often overseen by enslaved individuals or skilled freedmen specializing in hydraulic engineering. Despite the sophistication, challenges abounded. Water theft, known as perforatio, was a persistent problem. Individuals would illegally tap into public mains or even private pipes of others to gain unauthorized access to water. The curator aquarum and his staff were constantly vigilant, conducting inspections and imposing fines or even severing illegal connections. This ongoing battle against water theft highlights the immense value placed on a reliable water supply. It wasn't just a commodity, it was a resource to be carefully guarded and managed. Another challenge for private connections was the disposal of wastewater. While public latrines were often flushed into the sewer system, private homes typically lacked direct connections for human waste. As mentioned, Chamber pots were common, with contents then disposed of in middens or street gutters, relying on natural flushing or street cleaners. Kitchen and bath wastewater from private homes might drain into simple soakaways or smaller, local drains, which then fed into the larger network. This meant that even with private water supply, aspects of private waste management remained rather rudimentary compared to modern systems. The existence of private water connections underscored the social hierarchy of Rome. Access to abundant, clean, and convenient water within one's own home was a symbol of immense wealth and power. It allowed for a different quality of life, enabling leisure pursuits and displays of grandeur that were simply impossible for the average Roman. This distinction, while perhaps boring in its administrative details, reveals a fascinating layer of Roman society, where even something as fundamental as water was meticulously controlled and distributed according to status. The lead pipes, for all their historical controversy, were the very conduits of this distinction, carrying luxury to the elite while public fountains sustained the masses. And as we continue, we'll examine even more of the ingenuity and challenges involved in maintaining this vast, wet empire. We've marveled at the design and construction of Rome's aqueducts, witnessed the ingenious distribution within the city, and observed the social distinctions enabled by private water connections. But none of this would have been possible or sustainable without an equally complex and dedicated system of maintenance and administration. For the Roman water supply was not a static achievement. It was a living, breathing, and constantly demanding entity that required continuous vigilance and tireless labor. At the apex of this administrative pyramid was the curator aquarum, the water commissioner. This was a highly prestigious and important position, typically held by a senator of considerable experience and authority. We previously mentioned Sextus Julius Frontinus, who served in this role in the late 1st century AD. His surviving treatise, De Aqueductu Urbis Romi, stands as an unparalleled historical document, offering an astonishingly detailed account of the aqueduct system's history, capacity, technical specifications, and crucially for our discussion now, its management. Frontinus himself bemoaned the challenges of the role, noting the prevalence of fraud, inefficiency, and necessary repairs. His tenure marked a period of significant reform and improvement in the water administration. The curator aquarum was responsible for overseeing everything related to the city's water supply, from the springs and reservoirs at the source of the aqueducts, along their entire length, through the urban distribution networks, and even the public sewers. This included approving new connections, inspecting existing ones, ensuring fair distribution, and most importantly, managing the vast workforce dedicated to maintenance and repair. It was a role demanding both technical understanding and considerable administrative acumen. Reporting to the curator aquarum was a substantial staff, known collectively as the Familia Aquaria. This water family comprised hundreds, possibly thousands, of individuals, ranging from highly skilled engineers and architects to manual laborers, slaves, and freedmen. Augustus, the first Roman emperor, initially assigned a large number of slaves to the water department, recognizing the critical importance of a dedicated maintenance crew. Later emperors expanded and refined this organization, bringing it under direct imperial control. The duties of the Familia Aquaria were varied and demanding. At the source of the aqueducts, teams were responsible for maintaining the springs, ensuring the purity of the water, and protecting the surrounding catchment areas from pollution or unauthorized diversion. Along the aqueduct lines, especially the above-ground sections, regular patrols were conducted to inspect for cracks, leaks, or signs of structural weakness. Imagine walking for miles along an aqueduct channel, day after day, meticulously looking for any imperfection that could compromise the flow. Within the city, other teams focused on the distribution network. This included checking the casella, inspecting the lead pipes beneath the streets, ensuring public fountains were flowing correctly, and clearing blockages from drains. The sewers, particularly the main conduits like the cloaca maxima, required specialized cloacaria to navigate their dark, often noxious depths, clearing debris and making repairs to the masonry. This was undoubtedly one of the most unpleasant and dangerous jobs in Roman society, highlighting the Romans' pragmatism in ensuring urban functionality. Common maintenance issues were numerous. Leaks were a constant battle. Even minor cracks in the specus or faulty pipe joints could lead to significant water loss, eroding the surrounding ground and potentially undermining structures. Sedimentation was another persistent problem. Despite the sedimentation tanks, fine particles would inevitably settle in the channels, reducing the flow capacity over time. Regular cleaning, involving the manual removal of this buildup, was essential. This meant temporarily diverting water or shutting down sections of an aqueduct, a complex logistical challenge for the familiar aquaria. Illegal tapping, or water theft, as we discussed, was also a major headache for the administration. Unauthorized fistulae not only deprived legitimate users of water but could also strain the system, reduce pressure, and cause undetected leaks. The familiar aquaria had dedicated teams whose job it was to locate and sever these illegal connections, imposing fines and legal penalties on offenders. Frontinus himself dedicated a considerable portion of his treatise to detailing the various forms of water theft and the methods used to combat them, underscoring its prevalence. Repairs often involved skilled masons and engineers. Masonry arches had to be rebuilt, concrete linings patched, and lead pipes replaced or resoldered. The Romans were adept at working with their primary building materials, stone, concrete, and lead, and the techniques employed for repair were often as sophisticated as those used in original construction. For extensive repairs, entire sections of an aqueduct might need to be temporarily taken out of service, requiring careful planning to minimize disruption to the city's water supply, perhaps by diverting water through another aqueduct or relying more heavily on ground wells during the repair period. The constant cycle of maintenance was not merely about fixing problems, it was also about proactive management. Regular cleaning schedules, routine inspections, and preventative repairs were all part of the daily rhythm of the familia aquaria. This disciplined approach ensured the incredible longevity of many Roman hydraulic structures. Unlike many other ancient civilizations where public works would often fall into disrepair after the initial builder's death, the Romans established robust, bureaucratic systems for continuous upkeep. Frontinus's De Aqueductu is invaluable precisely because it gives us a first-hand account of these challenges and the administrative solutions. He meticulously recorded the names of the aqueducts, their lengths, their capacities, and the specific rules and regulations governing their use and maintenance. His work isn't just a technical manual, it's a window into the Roman mindset regarding public infrastructure, pragmatic, systematic, and deeply committed to ensuring the well-being of the city through its essential services. The organizational skills demonstrated in managing the familia aquaria and the entire water system were truly remarkable. It required not only engineering expertise, but also a sophisticated understanding of logistics, human resources, and civil administration. The seamless flow of water that defined Roman urban life was, in fact, the result of countless unseen hours of labor, diligent inspections, and continuous repairs. These unsung laborers, from the humblest ditch digger to the most skilled plumber, were the true backbone of Rome's hydraulic empire. As we've charted the incredible journey of water into and through Rome, a fundamental question emerges. How clean was this water, and what did the Romans understand about its connection to health? In an age long before germ theory, where the true causes of disease were shrouded in superstition and vague miasma theories, the Romans nonetheless displayed an astonishingly pragmatic and intuitive grasp of sanitation's importance for public well-being. Their collective effort ensured that the surprising complexity of Roman plumbing continued to function, day in and day out, decade after decade, enabling the prosperity and daily routines of millions. And as we continue our journey, we'll delve even further into the surprising details that underpin this wet marvel. The very first aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, was built to bring water from outside the city, largely because the Tiber River, Rome's traditional source, was already heavily polluted by urban runoff and human waste. This early decision signals a nascent understanding that locally sourced water, especially from a major river flowing through a growing city, was inherently less healthy. The preference for spring water, collected from distant, unpopulated areas, was a cornerstone of their water policy, driven by observations of better taste and likely fewer immediate illnesses. While they didn't comprehend microscopic pathogens, the Romans certainly understood that clean-looking, fresh-tasting, and continuously flowing water was superior to stagnant or visibly polluted sources. Their sophisticated system of piscini limeri, or settling tanks strategically placed along the aqueducts, is a clear testament to this understanding. As water flowed into these large basins, its velocity decreased significantly, allowing heavier sediment, silt, sand, and other particulate matter to sink to the bottom. Regular cleaning crews would then remove this accumulated sludge, ensuring that the water continuing its journey was visibly clearer. This process, while not a bacteriological purification, greatly improved the aesthetic quality of the water and removed many of the larger impurities that could carry contaminants or simply be unpalatable. The constant flow of water within the city also contributed to its relative purity. In public fountains, the water was always running, preventing stagnation. In the baths, fresh water was continuously introduced, and overflow was channeled into the sewers. This dynamic system contrasted sharply with static wells or cisterns, where water could become stagnant, warm, and a breeding ground for insects and bacteria, even if the Romans didn't understand the exact biological mechanisms. The sheer volume of water flushing through the city's systems inherently diluted contaminants, even if they were present. When Frontinus, our diligent curator aquarum, described the water supply, he not only documented its volume and administration, but also commented on the quality of water from different aqueducts, often noting which were preferred for drinking and which were more suitable for public baths or industrial uses. He would have known, for example, that the Aqua Marcia was highly prized for its cold, clear, and seemingly pure water, often regarded as the best for drinking. Compare this to many other ancient cities, where sanitation was rudimentary at best. Open sewers, overflowing cesspits, and reliance on heavily polluted rivers were the norm. Disease, particularly waterborne illnesses like dysentery and typhoid, would have been rampant. Rome, with its unparalleled access to clean water and its advanced, albeit imperfect, drainage system, undoubtedly enjoyed a significant public health advantage. This is not to say that Romans were immune to disease, far from it, but their water infrastructure certainly mitigated some of the worst aspects of urban overcrowding and poor hygiene seen elsewhere. The very act of bathing, a central ritual in Roman life, was itself a public health measure. Regular bathing, even without soap as we know it, they used oils and strigils, removed dirt and sweat, improving personal hygiene. The hot rooms of the baths also served a therapeutic purpose, inducing sweating and promoting relaxation. While their medical understanding was limited, the Romans recognized the general benefits of cleanliness and thermal treatments for well-being. However, the persistent question of lead poisoning looms over this discussion of water quality. As we touched upon, the Romans extensively used lead for pipes, cistern linings, and even some cooking vessels. Despite the mitigating factors like water hardness and constant flow that could reduce lead leaching into the water, exposure was still present. It is highly probable that chronic, low-level lead exposure was a contributing factor to various ailments among the Roman population, particularly among the wealthy who had greater access to lead-piped water in their homes. Symptoms like gastrointestinal issues, gout, which was prevalent among the Roman elite, and cognitive impairment could certainly be linked to lead. While unlikely to be the singular cause of Rome's decline, it remains a significant health concern in our retrospective analysis of their advanced plumbing. The Roman approach to water quality was pragmatic rather than scientific in the modern sense. They sought out the clearest, best-tasting springs. They built settling tanks to remove visible impurities. They ensured constant flow to prevent stagnation. They diverted waste away from public spaces as best they could. This pragmatic engineering, combined with observation and tradition, provided them with a standard of urban water supply and sanitation that was unrivaled for centuries. Their commitment to infrastructure, even the unglamorous parts like sewers, stemmed from a deep-seated understanding that a healthy, functioning city relied on these fundamental systems. Consider the philosophical implications as well. The Roman poet Horace once wrote of the aqueducts, "If anyone would accurately survey the city, he would acknowledge that no city in the world is more beautiful than Rome." While he likely referred to the visible grandeur, the underlying network of water and waste management was integral to this beauty and functionality. The ability to command water and tame it for the city's needs was seen as a sign of civilization, an embodiment of Roman pietas, duty, and gravitas, dignity. It elevated their urban living experience far beyond mere subsistence. In essence, the Romans, without microscopes or chemical analysis, instinctively engineered for health. Their aqueducts brought pure water from distant sources. Their settling tanks refined it further. Their public distribution system made it widely accessible. Their baths promoted personal cleanliness. And their sewers, while primitive by modern standards, effectively removed a significant portion of urban waste. This holistic, if imperfect, approach to water management played a crucial, though often understated, role in supporting the immense population and vibrant culture of the Roman world, making it a surprisingly clean and healthy place for its time, despite the unseen challenges lurking in its lead pipes. We've seen the monumental scale of Roman plumbing, the daily routines it enabled, and the diligent efforts required for its maintenance. But even in a system so meticulously engineered and administered, conflict and contention were never far below the surface. For water, the lifeblood of Rome was not just a utility. It was a commodity of immense value, a source of power, and a frequent subject of legal dispute and illicit activity. This brings us to the fascinating water wars of Rome, not battles fought with armies, but skirmishes over rights, access, and the illicit diversion of this precious resource. In the Roman world, water rights were deeply intertwined with property rights and imperial authority. While public fountains provided free access to all citizens, Private connections were strictly regulated. The right to draw water directly from an aqueduct or a city main was known as aqueductus, and it was usually granted by the emperor or, in earlier times, by the Senate or censors. These grants were not permanent. They were often tied to specific properties and could be revoked or altered. The meticulous records kept by the curator aquarum were essential for managing these complex allocations. Frontinus, in his treatise, dedicates significant attention to the legal framework surrounding water. He details the specific decrees, senatorial consultations, and imperial edicts that governed water allocation. His work reveals a highly bureaucratic system designed to ensure fairness, prevent abuse, and protect the public interest. Every private fistula or pipe connection was carefully documented, its size measured, and its point of origin noted. This rigorous documentation was intended to prevent unauthorized connections and ensure that each property received only its allotted share. However, despite these regulations, water theft was rampant. Frontinus vividly describes various methods of illicit diversion, which he calls tricks used by unscrupulous individuals. One common method was puncta foramines, literally piercing holes. This involved illegally puncturing a public main or another private pipe to siphon off water. Imagine someone drilling a small hole into a lead pipe buried beneath the street, perhaps at night, and discreetly running a small tube to their property. This was difficult to detect, especially if done subtly, and it was a constant drain on the city's overall water supply. Another tactic was calyx dalasis, or a deceitful nozzle. When a private connection was granted, the water was typically delivered through a bronze nozzle or stopcock of a specific, regulated diameter, ensuring the correct flow rate. Dishonest individuals would secretly replace their authorized nozzle with a larger one, thereby drawing significantly more water than they were entitled to. Frontinus, with the zeal of a meticulous civil servant, made it a priority to inspect these nozzles, often finding that they had been tampered with or replaced. His reforms included a mandate to use only official, stamped nozzles to prevent such fraud. The motives for water theft were simple: convenience and profit. For wealthy landowners, an unauthorized connection might provide a greater volume of water for their gardens, fountains, or private baths without paying for it. For some, it might have been about diverting water to supply a commercial venture, such as a fulanica, a laundry and dry cleaning establishment, or a mill, without incurring the necessary fees or obtaining proper permits. The economic value of water was immense, and the temptation to bypass regulations was strong. Punishments for water tampering or theft could be severe, reflecting the importance the state placed on its water supply. Fines were common, but illegal connections could also be severed, denying the offender access to water altogether. In more extreme cases, particularly for repeated offenses or large-scale fraud, more stringent legal penalties might have been applied, though specific details of convictions are scarce. The threat of punishment, combined with the constant vigilance of the familiar aquaria, was intended to deter such activities. The familiar aquaria itself had a specialized branch of officials, often called aquarii, whose role extended beyond mere physical maintenance. They acted as inspectors and enforcers, patrolling the aqueduct lines and urban distribution networks, actively looking for signs of illegal activity. They would investigate suspicious diversions, check pipe stamps, and report instances of tampering to the curator aquarum. Their work was not always popular, as they were often tasked with uncovering fraud among the powerful elite, but it was essential for preserving the integrity of the system. Even disputes between legitimate users could arise. A property owner might complain that their neighbor was receiving too much water, or that their own supply was diminished due to upstream diversions. These disputes would often be brought before the curator aquarum, who would act as an arbiter, relying on the detailed records and the reports of his aquarii to make a judgment. This quasi-judicial role highlights the commissioner's extensive authority and the formal recognition of water rights within Roman law. The water wars extended beyond individual fraud to larger systemic issues. There were instances where powerful individuals or communities would attempt to divert water from public lines for their own agricultural or industrial purposes, sometimes even constructing their own private, unauthorized aqueduct branches. Such large-scale diversions posed a significant threat to the urban supply and required direct intervention from the state. The constant struggle to manage and protect the water resource reveals that even with the most advanced infrastructure of the ancient world, human nature, with its desires for convenience and profit, remained a persistent challenge. This ongoing battle for control over water was a microcosm of broader power dynamics in Roman society. Access to water was not just about basic needs. It was about privilege, status, and the ability to project wealth and influence. A senator who could ensure lavish fountains flowed in his villa, or who could secure water for a new bath complex he was sponsoring, was demonstrating his power and beneficence. Conversely, the inability to control water theft or ensure proper distribution could be a sign of administrative weakness. Thus, the seemingly mundane topic of Roman plumbing reveals a surprisingly intricate web of engineering, administration, law, and social conflict. The peaceful flow of water through the aqueducts and pipes was often underpinned by a silent struggle for control, a constant negotiation between public good and private gain. The Romans, with their characteristic pragmatism, understood that even the most impressive engineering feat required constant legal and administrative vigilance to protect its integrity. It was a complex dance, the water, the pipes, the laws, and the people, all intricately linked in the grand, wet tapestry of Rome. And as we continue, we'll explore even more hidden facets of this remarkable civilization's relationship with water. Having explored the legal and administrative struggles over water, let us now ascend from the realm of dry bureaucracy to the more fluid and artistic expression of water within Roman society and culture. Beyond its indispensable function as a utility for drinking, bathing, and waste removal, water in ancient Rome transcended mere practicality to become a profound element of art, symbolism, and the very sensory experience of urban life. The constant flow of water shaped the city's aesthetics, its mythology, and even its soundscape, creating a unique water culture that permeates our understanding of Roman civilization. The most visible manifestation of water's artistic and symbolic importance lay in the multitude of public fountains. We've touched upon the Lacus as communal water sources, but many were far grander than simple basins. These evolved into elaborate sculptural compositions known as nymphea. A nymphaeum was typically a monumental fountain or a grotto dedicated to the nymphs, the minor goddesses of springs, streams, and other natural waters. These structures were often richly adorned with marble, mosaics, and statuary, depicting aquatic themes, mythological scenes, or allegories of abundance and fertility. Imagine walking through a Roman city street, or perhaps the grand open spaces of a forum, and encountering one of these magnificent nymphea. The visual spectacle of water cascading over tiers of marble, pooling in ornate basins, and perhaps even animating sculptures would have been breathtaking. These weren't just water dispensers. They were public art installations, designed to delight the senses and serve as civic adornments. They symbolize the city's prosperity and its mastery over nature, a constant reminder of the state's beneficence in providing this vital resource. The sound of their ceaseless flow would have been a pervasive and soothing presence, a soft counterpoint to the clamor of urban life, distinguishing Rome from drier, less hydrated cities. Water also held a significant place in Roman religion and mythology. Beyond the nymphs, deities associated with springs, rivers, and the sea were venerated. Neptune, the god of the sea, was a major deity, often depicted with his trident. River gods personifying specific rivers like the Tiber, Tibrinus, were also given offerings and had their own shrines. Springs and fountains were often considered sacred places, believed to be inhabited by local spirits or nymphs, and were sites for votive offerings and rituals. The Romans understood that water was life, and its mysterious origins and constant renewal were seen as divine gifts, inspiring reverence and awe. The Punic Wars, for example, saw the construction of some of the earliest aqueducts, but it was the Pax Romana, the period of extended peace, that truly allowed for the flourishing of water as an aesthetic and cultural element. With resources no longer solely devoted to military conquest, the emperors and wealthy citizens invested heavily in public works that enhanced the quality of urban life and showcased their prestige. The fountains and baths became grand canvases for artistic expression, transforming mere utility into magnificent civic spectacles. In private homes and villas, especially those of the elite, water features were equally pervasive and equally symbolic of wealth and taste. Lavish gardens often incorporated intricate systems of fountains, reflecting pools, and even small waterfalls, creating tranquil oases within the bustling city or sprawling estates. These private water features required their own intricate plumbing, drawing from the main city supply or from private wells and cisterns. The gentle murmur of water in a peristyle garden, the shimmer of sunlight on a private fountain, these were sensory luxuries, designed for contemplation and enjoyment, a clear sign of refined living. Beyond aesthetics, water played a crucial role in creating a cooler microclimate within the city, especially during the sweltering Roman summers. The constant evaporation from fountains, pools, and even the damp surfaces around the baths would have provided a noticeable cooling effect, making urban life more comfortable. This practical benefit subtly contributed to the daily rhythms and well-being of the population, adding another layer to the surprise of Roman plumbing's complexity. The very availability of abundant water also facilitated other aspects of Roman culture. It allowed for the cultivation of lush urban gardens and parks, providing green spaces for relaxation and recreation. It enabled the large-scale production of goods that required water, such as pottery, textiles, especially fulling operations, and food processing. In essence, the omnipresent water supply became an invisible, yet indispensable, scaffolding for countless facets of Roman daily life, beyond just direct consumption. The sound of water, too, was an integral part of the Roman urban experience. Unlike many other ancient cities, which would have been primarily defined by the sounds of human activity, animals, and perhaps the occasional roar of a fire, Rome would have been distinctively characterized by the ceaseless murmur, splash, and gurgle of flowing water. From the gentle trickle of a public fountain to the rush of water into the baths, to the unseen currents in the sewers below, water provided a constant, calming auditory backdrop. This pervasive sound would have been a comforting reminder of the city's prosperity and the constant diligence of its engineers. It was the urban melody, a soothing rhythm that underscored the city's vitality. Even the ruins of Roman cities today often feature the remnants of their water systems, a fallen aqueduct arch, the basin of a dried-up fountain, the dark entrance to a forgotten sewer. These silent witnesses speak volumes about a civilization that understood, perhaps better than any other in the ancient world, the profound impact of water management on the quality of life, the expression of power, and the very soul of a city. The Romans didn't just move water, they integrated it into the very fabric of their existence, transforming it into an art form, a symbol of civilization, and a constant companion in their urban journey. This deep, cultural appreciation for water rounds out our understanding of its surprising complexity in their world. While the aqueducts, baths, and sewers represent the most visible and widely discussed aspects of Roman water management, the genius of Roman hydraulic engineering extended far beyond urban sanitation and amenity. The Romans, with their characteristic pragmatism, harnessed the power of flowing water to drive industry, extract resources on an unprecedented scale, and even create sophisticated, if rudimentary, forms of automation. This demonstrates a deeper understanding of hydrodynamics, not necessarily theoretical, but profoundly practical. Perhaps one of the most significant, yet often overlooked, applications of Roman water power was the water mill. For centuries, grinding grain into flour was a laborious task, performed by hand mills or animal power. The invention and widespread adoption of water mills revolutionized this process, marking an early form of industrialization. Roman engineers developed various types of water mills, including both undershot and overshot wheels, each suited to different water flow conditions. The undershot wheel was simpler, driven by the current flowing beneath the wheel, while the overshot wheel, where water flowed onto the top of the wheel, was more efficient, converting more of the water's potential energy into mechanical work. The scale of Roman milling operations could be immense. The most famous example is the Barbegal Aqueduct and Mill Complex near Arles in Gaul, modern-day France, dating to the 4th century AD. Here, a single aqueduct fed 16 overshot watermills arranged in 2 parallel lines down a steep hillside. This cascading system meant that the water, after powering one mill, flowed down to power the next, maximizing efficiency. Estimates suggest this complex could have produced enough flour to feed tens of thousands of people, making it a true industrial complex of its time. The existence of such large-scale water-powered factories underscores the Roman ability to integrate their impressive water supply systems with industrial needs, demonstrating a forward-thinking approach to production. But water's power was harnessed for far more than just grinding grain. One of the most astonishing applications was in hydraulic mining, particularly for gold and tin. The Roman method known as ruinomontium, or demolishing the mountains, utilized colossal volumes of water delivered by purpose-built aqueducts to literally wash away entire hillsides. The most famous site for this technique is Las Medulas in northwestern Spain, a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. Here, multiple aqueducts, some tens of kilometers long, brought water to a vast gold mining complex. At Las Medulas, Roman engineers would tunnel into the mountainside, creating a network of galleries and shafts. Then, massive quantities of water were released into these tunnels. The water, under immense pressure, would violently scour the soft conglomerate rock, collapsing sections of the mountain. The resulting slurry of mud, gravel, and gold-bearing ore was then washed through a series of sluices and channels. These channels were lined with rough material or riffles, designed to trap the heavier gold particles, while the lighter waste material was carried away. This process was incredibly destructive to the landscape, but extraordinarily efficient in extracting vast quantities of gold. The scale of the hydraulic engineering required for such mining operations was staggering. Entire new aqueducts were constructed solely to supply these mines, sometimes diverting rivers and spanning vast distances across challenging terrain. These were often temporary or less aesthetically refined than urban aqueducts, built purely for functional, industrial purposes. The sheer volume of water diverted, manipulated, and directed with such force demonstrates a profound understanding of hydraulic pressure and flow dynamics, enabling resource extraction on a scale unmatched until the Industrial Revolution. Beyond large-scale industry, water also powered more specialized devices. The Romans developed sophisticated water clocks, or clepsydry, which used the regulated flow of water to measure time. While originating in earlier civilizations, the Romans refined these devices, making them more accurate and even incorporating intricate mechanisms for sounding alarms or displaying astronomical information. Some were quite elaborate, showcasing a remarkable blend of engineering and artistry. There's also evidence of early water-powered automatons and mechanical toys, designed for entertainment or as displays of ingenuity in wealthy Roman villas or temple complexes. While not widespread industrial applications, these examples highlight the Roman fascination with harnessing water's energy for various purposes, pushing the boundaries of mechanical invention in their time. These party tricks or curiosities, perhaps simple fountains that moved figures or made sounds, relied on subtle manipulations of water pressure and flow, demonstrating a playful yet intelligent approach to hydrotechnology. The Roman understanding of hydrodynamics was largely empirical rather than theoretical, driven by observation and practical experimentation. They didn't have calculus or a modern understanding of fluid mechanics, but they understood gradients, pressure, and flow rates through trial and error, refined over centuries of building. They knew how to build inverted siphons to cross valleys, though they preferred arcades for very long stretches due to cost and maintenance, how to regulate flow with stopcocks and valves, and how to harness the energy of falling water. This practical knowledge, accumulated and passed down through generations of engineers and builders, was the bedrock of their hydrotechnological achievements. The integration of water power into mining and milling profoundly impacted the Roman economy and their ability to sustain their vast empire. It allowed for the processing of resources on a scale previously unimaginable, providing the precious metals for coinage and the foodstuffs to feed growing populations. It underscores that Roman plumbing was not just about providing amenities for citizens. It was also a vital tool of economic productivity and imperial expansion, an unseen force driving the machinery of empire. So, from the silent flow that fed the public fountains to the roaring torrents that tore apart mountains, Roman ingenuity in manipulating water was truly remarkable. It was a complex symphony of engineering, logistics, and resource management, transforming the natural world to serve the needs and ambitions of a dominant civilization. The water, channeled and controlled, became not just a symbol of Roman might, but a literal engine of their vast productive power. And as we conclude our journey, we will consider the enduring legacy of this magnificent watery world they built. Behind every grand aqueduct arch, every continuously flowing fountain, and every smoothly functioning sewer lay the collective effort of a vast and diverse workforce. The Roman water system was not merely a triumph of engineering design. It was a testament to the organization of labor, the cultivation of specialized skills, and the meticulous coordination of countless individuals. From the intellectual architects who conceived the grand plans to the manual laborers who moved mountains, Each played an indispensable role in maintaining Rome's hydraulic marvel. At the highest echelon were the architecti, the Roman engineers and master builders. These were the intellectual minds responsible for the design and overall supervision of large-scale public works, including aqueducts, bridges, and bath complexes. They possessed a deep practical understanding of geometry, surveying, materials science, and hydraulics. While their theoretical knowledge of physics might not have been formalized in the same way as modern science, their empirical understanding, honed through generations of experience and meticulous observation, allowed them to calculate gradients, assess structural integrity, and plan complex water flows with astonishing accuracy. Famous figures like Vitruvius, though more a theoretician, laid out principles that guided many of these practical engineers. Their social standing varied, but the most successful architects could achieve considerable wealth and prestige, often advising emperors and senators directly. Beneath the architects were the librators, the surveyors. These were the essential frontline technicians who translated the grand designs into practical reality. Armed with tools like the corybates, a long wooden beam with a water-filled groove for leveling, and the dioptra, a sighting instrument for establishing angles, they meticulously plotted the routes for aqueducts, ensuring the precise, gentle gradients necessary for water flow over many miles of varying terrain. Their accuracy was paramount. Even a slight miscalculation could result in stagnant water or, worse, a destructive torrent. Their work often involved considerable time in the field, navigating wild landscapes, and their precision was legendary. The hands-on work of building the channels and structures fell to skilled masons and construction laborers. These craftsmen shaped the massive stones for aqueduct arches, laid the bricks for bath walls, and mixed the waterproof concrete opus signinum that lined the conduits. Their expertise in cutting, dressing, and fitting stone, often without mortar in the grander structures, ensured the longevity and stability of the system. This work required immense physical strength, precision, and a deep understanding of materials. Large-scale projects would involve thousands of laborers, often a mix of free citizens, military personnel, especially for strategic infrastructure, and enslaved individuals organized into disciplined work gangs. Within the urban distribution network, the plumbarea, the plumbers were critical. As we discussed, these specialists worked with lead, shaping sheets into pipes, soldering joints, and installing the complex network of fistulae that brought water to public fountains and private residences. Their skills were highly sought after, as proper pipe laying and joining were essential to prevent leaks and ensure efficient water delivery. The plumbari were true artisans, mastering a material that was both malleable and, if improperly handled, potentially hazardous. Then there was the constant, often unsung work of maintenance crews, particularly the familia aquaria. These individuals, overseen by officials reporting to the curator aquarum, were responsible for the daily upkeep of the entire system. This included source protectors, guarding the springs and reservoirs to ensure water purity and prevent sabotage; aqueduct patrols, walking the lengthy aqueduct routes, inspecting for cracks, leaks, or vegetation encroachment; channel cleaners, manually removing sediment buildup from the specus and settling tanks. This was a continuous, physically demanding task. Sewer cleaners cloacae, the most hazardous and unpleasant job, clearing blockages and repairing structures within the dark, foul-smelling sewers. Pipe repairers, fixing leaks in the lead pipes, often requiring excavation and resoldering. Water inspectors aquarii, responsible for detecting and severing illegal connections, ensuring fair distribution, and resolving water disputes. Many members of the familia aquaria were initially slaves, assigned to this critical public service. Over time, many would become freedmen, gaining valuable specialized skills that could lead to respected, if not always glamorous, careers. The sheer numbers of people involved in this continuous maintenance were staggering. Frontinus mentions that in his time, there were hundreds of imperial slaves and freedmen dedicated solely to the water administration, in addition to those belonging to private citizens who had water rights. The transfer of knowledge and skills within this vast system was largely through apprenticeship and practical experience. Young engineers would train under experienced masters. Masons learned their craft by working on projects. Plumbers passed down their techniques through generations. While there were no formal engineering universities as we know them, the practical knowledge acquired on the job, combined with established traditions and meticulous observation, ensured that the complex techniques were preserved and refined. This hands-on, practical approach to engineering and construction was a hallmark of Roman technological prowess. The seamless integration of these diverse skills, from the abstract calculations of the architect to the brute force of the laborer, was a defining characteristic of Roman large-scale public works. It reflected a highly organized and hierarchical society, capable of mobilizing vast resources and human capital towards common civic goals. The Roman state understood that the health and prosperity of its capital, and indeed its empire, depended on the smooth and uninterrupted flow of water. In a world where most cities struggled with basic sanitation, Rome's ability to sustain its immense population owed much to these unseen and often unsung individuals. They built and maintained the invisible networks that brought life and convenience to the city, allowing its citizens to thrive, its markets to flourish, and its grand public spaces to teem with life. The surprising complexity of Roman plumbing is not just about the pipes and the concrete. It's about the countless hands and minds that brought this wet miracle into being and kept it flowing, day after day, for centuries. Their legacy is literally etched in stone and flowed through lead, a quiet testament to a civilization's enduring commitment to its essential infrastructure. Having discussed the dedicated workforce behind Rome's impressive water systems, let us now turn our gaze forward, beyond the height of Roman power, to consider the enduring legacy of their hydraulic innovations, and, paradoxically, their eventual decline and rediscovery. With the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, a process that was, in truth, far more gradual and complex than a single date suggests, much of the advanced infrastructure of the Roman world began to suffer. The aqueducts, baths, and sewers, once symbols of imperial might and civic prosperity, fell victim to neglect, disrepair, and deliberate sabotage. Invasions by Goths, Vandals, and other Germanic tribes often targeted critical infrastructure. Aqueducts were deliberately cut to deprive besieged cities of water or to create strategic barriers. Once damaged, the centralized authority and resources necessary for large-scale repairs were largely absent. Imagine the decay: channels crumbling, lead pipes looted for their valuable metal, castella falling into ruin, and sediment choking the flow. The intricate hypocaust systems of the baths, dependent on constant fuel and dedicated stokers, cooled and fractured. As cities depopulated and imperial administration dissolved into fragmented local powers, the knowledge base and the specialized familia aquaria dispersed. The systematic approach to maintenance, so crucial for such a complex system, simply ceased to exist on the grand scale. This period, often termed the Dark Ages in Europe, saw a dramatic regression in urban sanitation. Cities that had once enjoyed abundant, clean running water reverted to relying on local wells, polluted rivers, and open cesspits. Public baths, once hubs of social life and hygiene, either disappeared entirely or transformed into smaller, less sophisticated facilities. The sheer volume of waste that Roman sewers had once quietly carried away now often accumulated in streets, contributing to widespread disease and a significant decline in public health. It's a stark reminder that advanced technology, without sustained maintenance and political will, can quickly become lost or rendered useless. However, not all was lost immediately, nor was the decline uniform across the former empire. In the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, many Roman engineering traditions persisted, and cities like Constantinople maintained elements of sophisticated water supply systems for centuries. In the West, some smaller local aqueducts continued to function or were partially repaired, particularly for vital monastic communities or strategic settlements. The principles of Roman construction, particularly their robust use of concrete and arches, were not entirely forgotten, but the scale and integration of their hydraulic systems became a distant memory for most of Europe. For centuries, European cities struggled with sanitation and water supply, plagued by epidemics and unhygienic conditions. It wasn't until the Renaissance, and then more significantly the Industrial Revolution, that a renewed interest in public health and urban infrastructure began to emerge. Scholars and engineers started to look back at the surviving Roman ruins with renewed awe and curiosity. The monumental aqueduct arches, still standing stoically across landscapes, served as powerful visual reminders of a lost era of engineering prowess. The rediscovery of classical texts, including Frontinus's De Aqueductu, was profoundly influential. His meticulous descriptions of water administration, pipe sizing, and maintenance provided invaluable insights into the practical workings of the Roman system. As burgeoning modern cities faced their own challenges of population growth and sanitation in the 18th and 19th centuries, Roman solutions began to be re-examined and adapted. Engineers studied the gradients of Roman aqueducts, the design of their distribution tanks, and the principles of gravity-fed systems. The enduring principles that underpinned Roman plumbing, gravity as the primary mover of water, the importance of continuous flow, robust and durable construction, and the concept of water as a public service, became foundational for modern hydraulic engineering. While materials and techniques evolved dramatically, iron and later steel pipes replaced lead steam power, and then electricity-powered pumping stations. The underlying concepts of supplying clean water and removing waste on a large urban scale were deeply influenced by the Roman precedent. Consider our modern water systems. While vastly more complex with pumps, advanced filtration, and chemical treatments, the fundamental idea of bringing clean water from a distant, pure source to a concentrated population, and then efficiently removing waste, echoes the Roman model. The very notion of public access to water and the state's responsibility to provide it finds a strong precedent in Roman public policy. Even the word plumbing itself, as we noted, is a direct linguistic legacy of plumbum, the lead pipes that were so central to the Roman system. Today, fragments of Roman aqueducts still carry water in some parts of Europe, a living testament to their enduring quality. The Cloaca Maxima, too, remarkably, still functions in parts of Rome. These ancient structures stand as silent instructors, reminding us of the ingenuity of a civilization that, millennia ago, solved complex problems of urban living with solutions that were both effective and remarkably sustainable, even if their knowledge of unseen health hazards was limited. The story of Roman plumbing, therefore, is a grand narrative spanning thousands of years. It is a story of ambition, innovation, decline, and resurgence. It reminds us that even the most advanced technologies of one era can be lost to another, only to be rediscovered and reimagined. It's a quiet testament to the enduring human need for clean water and effective sanitation, a need that the Romans addressed with a level of sophistication that continues to inspire and instruct us, even in our highly technological age. The invisible veins of their empire still leave traces, guiding our understanding of public health and urban design. Having considered the grand legacy of Roman hydraulic engineering within the capital, let us now extend our gaze beyond the 7 hills of Rome to see how this watery mastery spread across a vast empire, adapting and transforming landscapes from the deserts of North Africa to the misty shores of Britannia. While Rome itself possessed the most extensive and famous hydraulic infrastructure, the reach of Roman plumbing was truly imperial. As the legions conquered and consolidated vast territories, they brought with them not only their laws and their language, but also their sophisticated engineering knowledge, particularly in water management. From the arid plains of North Africa to the temperate climates of Gaul and Britain, Roman engineers adapted their proven techniques to diverse local conditions, leaving behind a legacy of impressive water systems throughout the provinces. A crucial aspect of this widespread application of hydraulic engineering was the Roman military camp. Whenever a legion established a new camp, whether temporary or permanent, the immediate priority after securing the perimeter was always water. Soldiers needed clean water for drinking, cooking, and hygiene. Engineers attached to the legions were experts in locating water sources, digging wells, building temporary aqueducts, and even constructing rudimentary drainage systems. These skills were honed on campaign and then applied to the development of new towns and cities that often grew out of military encampments. This practical, on-the-spot application of hydraulic engineering ensured the health and effectiveness of the legions, and subsequently laid the groundwork for civilian settlements. Consider, for example, Rome and Britain. Despite its generally wetter climate compared to the Mediterranean, Roman towns like Bath, Aquae Sulis, Chester Deva Victrix, and Lincoln Lindum Colonia all featured Roman water systems. Bath is perhaps the most famous, with its magnificent complex built around natural hot springs. Here, Roman engineers enclosed the sacred spring, channeled the hot water into a series of pools, and built an elaborate bathing establishment complete with hypocaust heating. They also created systems to bring cold water from distant sources for mixing and drinking, showcasing their ability to integrate natural resources with engineered solutions. In North Africa, where water was a far scarcer commodity, Roman ingenuity was particularly remarkable. Cities like Leptis Magna, Timgad, and Carthage developed sophisticated water supplies tailored to the arid environment. Engineers constructed vast networks of cisterns to collect and store rainwater, particularly from large public buildings and courtyards. They built elaborate aqueducts, sometimes over long distances, to tap into scarce springs or wadis. In places like Douga, Tunisia, impressive public fountains and elaborate bath complexes were fed by these meticulously engineered systems, turning desert outposts into thriving urban centers. The challenge of water scarcity forced Roman engineers to be even more innovative in conservation and storage. The Middle East, too, bears witness to Roman water engineering. In regions like Roman Syria and Jordan, where Hellenistic and Nabatean water management traditions already existed, the Romans often built upon or integrated with existing infrastructure. They constructed aqueducts to supply cities like Antioch and Palmyra, and their military outposts in the desert relied on complex cisterns and reservoirs. The famous Roman bridge at Zigana in Turkey, part of an aqueduct system, shows their ability to construct long-distance conduits over challenging mountainous terrain, ensuring water supply to distant garrisons and cities. What is striking about these provincial systems is the adaptability of Roman engineering. While the core principles, gravity flow, durable construction, and comprehensive planning, remained constant, the materials and specific designs often varied according to local resources and climate. In regions with abundant stone, aqueducts might be predominantly stone-built. In areas where suitable stone was scarce, or for temporary structures, timber and concrete might be more prevalent. The type of water source, springs, rivers, or rainwater, also dictated the collection and treatment methods. This flexibility allowed Roman hydraulic engineering to be effectively deployed across a vast empire with diverse geographical and climatic conditions. The transfer of knowledge was integral to this expansion. Roman legions, as mentioned, played a key role. Their engineers and skilled craftsmen would be deployed to new provinces, bringing with them the expertise developed in Italy. Civilian engineers and architects would also travel, sharing their knowledge and supervising local labor. The Roman administrative system ensured that best practices were disseminated, and successful techniques in one province could be replicated in another. This systematic approach to knowledge transfer allowed for a consistent standard of engineering across the empire. The lasting impact of these provincial systems was profound. They transformed landscapes, enabling agriculture in previously arid regions, supporting large urban populations, and fostering economic development. They brought Roman standards of hygiene and public amenity to conquered peoples, often serving as a powerful symbol of Roman civilization and benefaction. Even after the collapse of direct Roman rule, many of these aqueducts and reservoirs continued to be used for centuries, maintained by subsequent local powers who understood their indispensable value. From the monumental arches spanning the valleys of France to the intricate cisterns hidden beneath the North African sun, the legacy of Roman plumbing in the provinces is a testament to an empire that understood the fundamental truth: control water, and you control life. As we reflect on the sheer scale and sophistication of Roman plumbing, it's natural to ask, how did it compare to the water management systems of other ancient civilizations? Was Rome truly unique, or merely a culmination of earlier ideas? While impressive feats of hydraulic engineering emerged across the ancient world, Rome's approach stood apart in its comprehensive integration, its focus on urban public access, and its unparalleled scale. They didn't just build roads and forts. They built the arteries of civilization, ensuring that even in the furthest reaches of their vast domain, the surprising complexity of their hydraulic genius left an indelible, watery mark. Their ability to export and adapt this technology was as crucial to their imperial success as their legions. Let us briefly survey some of these earlier achievements. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, water was fundamental to existence. The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians developed intricate irrigation systems to harness the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, transforming arid lands into fertile agricultural zones. Their canals, dams, and levees were marvels of early engineering, allowing for surplus food production that supported large urban centers. They also had rudimentary drainage systems within cities, and some impressive engineering for flood control. However, their primary focus was on agriculture, and urban domestic water supply was often limited to wells or river access, not the widespread, pressurized distribution seen in Rome. Ancient Egypt was, of course, entirely defined by the Nile River. Their sophisticated water management revolved around predicting and managing the annual Nile flood, utilizing nilometers to measure water levels, and developing basin irrigation systems to trap and distribute the flood waters. While they also had some impressive wells, cisterns, and even early forms of plumbing for elite residences and temples, their urban water supply was heavily localized and lacked the grand, long-distance aqueduct systems of Rome. Their drainage, too, was relatively simple, often relying on open channels and natural runoff into the Nile. Their genius lay in harnessing a single, powerful river, rather than bringing water from diverse, distant sources. The Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations in the Aegean and later the ancient Greeks also made significant contributions. The Minoans on Crete, for instance, constructed advanced sanitation systems within their palaces, including flushing latrines and terracotta pipes for drainage, demonstrating remarkable foresight for their time. The Greeks, while focused on public health, generally relied more on local springs, wells, and cisterns for water supply. They built impressive public fountains, often at springheads and some short aqueducts, but these were typically modest in comparison to later Roman endeavors. Their urban planning was often focused on the agora and temples, with water supply being more localized and less centrally managed for widespread distribution. Perhaps the most comparable early system, in terms of urban sanitation, comes from the Indus Valley civilization, particularly the cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, circa 2500–1900 BC. These cities featured remarkably advanced drainage systems, with elaborate brick-lined sewers running beneath the streets, and even private bathrooms and toilets in many homes. This level of internal domestic plumbing and organized waste removal was astonishingly ahead of its time. However, their large-scale external water supply systems, like aqueducts bringing water from distant sources, were not as evident or as extensive as Rome's. Their brilliance was internal city planning and drainage. So what then truly set Rome apart? 1. Scale and volume. No other ancient civilization brought such vast quantities of fresh water from such distant sources into its major urban centers. The sheer number, length, and capacity of Rome's aqueducts were unprecedented and remained unmatched for centuries. 2. Integrated urban system. Rome developed a truly comprehensive urban water system. It wasn't just about bringing water in. It was about its meticulous distribution to public fountains, grand baths, and private homes, followed by an equally systematic removal of wastewater through an extensive sewer network. This holistic, interconnected approach was unique. 3. Public health focus. While other civilizations had elements of sanitation, Rome's commitment to providing clean water and public bathing facilities for the masses was unparalleled. The thermae were not just for the elite, they were for everyone, a true testament to a civic ideal of widespread hygiene and social amenity. 4. Administrative organization. The Romans established a sophisticated bureaucratic structure, complete with curators aquarum, familia aquaria, and detailed legal frameworks, to manage, maintain, and protect their water supply. This institutionalized approach ensured the longevity and efficiency of the system, unlike many earlier hydraulic feats that might have been dependent on the reign of a single powerful ruler. 5. Engineering versatility and adaptability. As we discussed, Roman engineers could apply their principles across vastly different terrains and climates, from the humid forests of Britain to the arid deserts of North Africa, demonstrating a versatile and robust engineering methodology. Their ability to consistently build durable, gravity-fed systems over such varied geographies was exceptional. The Roman difference in water engineering was rooted in their pragmatism, their emphasis on public utility, and their unmatched capacity for large-scale, coordinated public works. They didn't just understand how water flowed. They understood how to manage it, how to protect it, and how to make it serve the needs of millions. Their engineers were not just builders. They were urban planners, public health advocates, and even economists, recognizing water's central role in sustaining a thriving empire. Therefore, while we acknowledge the ingenuity of earlier civilizations, the Romans truly revolutionized urban water management. Their system was a grand symphony of engineering, administration, and social policy, a complex interplay that allowed Rome to flourish as a city of unprecedented size and luxury. It was the fundamental infrastructure that enabled the very fabric of Roman life, making their surprisingly complex world of plumbing truly unrivaled in the ancient age. As we approach the culmination of our journey through Rome and plumbing, let us shift our focus from the technical and administrative to the truly immersive, the sensory experience of living in a city constantly permeated by water. For Romans, water was not merely a functional necessity. It was an omnipresent element that shaped their daily lives, their perceptions, and the very atmosphere of their magnificent city, contributing to a unique urban soundscape, visual tapestry, and even a distinct feel. Imagine, if you will, being a Roman citizen waking in the sprawling capital. The first sound that might greet you, filtering through the windows of your insula or villa, would likely not have been the distant roar of a chariot race or the clamor of the forum. Instead, it would have been the pervasive, gentle murmur of flowing water. From the rhythmic splash of nearby public fountains Lacus, to the continuous gurgle of unseen drains, and the distant rush of water filling the grand baths, Rome would have resonated with a symphony of liquid sound. This constant auditory presence was a soothing backdrop to daily life, a refreshing acoustic signature that set Rome apart from the dusty, drier cities of the ancient world. It was the ambient sound of prosperity and civilization, a constant reminder of the city's vitality. Visually, water was everywhere, catching the light and creating dynamic scenes. The majestic aqueduct arches, glittering in the morning sun, would have been a visible testament to the city's lifeblood. Within the city, water sparkled in the numerous public fountains, cascading over ornate marble nymphea, pooling in reflecting basins, and animating sculptural displays. The baths, with their vast pools and shimmering surfaces, would have offered reflections and plays of light, turning functional spaces into dazzling architectural spectacles. Even in private villas, the sight of water dancing in courtyard fountains or flowing through intricate garden channels would have added a sense of tranquility and beauty, a constant source of visual pleasure. Beyond sight and sound, water engaged the sense of touch, and surprisingly, even smell. The refreshing coolness of a public fountain on a hot summer day, the invigorating shock of the frigidarium plunge pool after the heat of the caldarium, or simply the damp, cool air emanating from the nymphea. These were tactile experiences integral to Roman urban life. And in terms of smell, the efficiency of Roman sewers and the constant flushing action of water meant that, at least in the better-maintained areas of the city, the pervasive stench of human waste that characterized many other ancient metropolises would have been significantly reduced. While no ancient city was entirely odorless, the Roman dedication to water-driven sanitation certainly mitigated some of the worst olfactory assaults, making daily life more tolerable and pleasant. This omnipresent sensory environment fostered a particular kind of social interaction and well-being. Public fountains were not just water sources. They were social hubs where people gathered, exchanged news, and lingered in the refreshing spray. The baths, as we know, were the ultimate social melting pot, where the sounds of conversation mingled with the splashing of water and the echoes from the vast halls. The very act of sharing and experiencing water collectively contributed to a sense of community and civic identity. It was a shared resource, enjoyed in shared spaces, fostering a unique Roman sensibility. The abundance of water also allowed for the creation of lush urban gardens and green spaces, which provided not only aesthetic beauty, but also pockets of cooler, fresher air within the dense city. These areas, often watered by intricate internal plumbing systems, offered respite from the summer heat and the urban clamor, creating microclimates of calm and beauty. The constant need to manage and control this water also fostered a particular kind of practical aesthetic, where functionality and beauty were often seamlessly integrated, as seen in the elegant lines of an aqueduct or the balanced proportions of a nymphaeum. The psychological impact of such reliable and abundant water access cannot be overstated. In a world where drought and disease were constant threats, the knowledge that clean, fresh water was always available, cascading into fountains and filling baths, must have instilled a profound sense of security and well-being. It was a tangible manifestation of the city's power, its wealth, and its ability to provide for its citizens. This sense of security allowed for a greater focus on leisure, culture, and intellectual pursuits, contributing to the flourishing of Roman civilization. Contrast this with the daily struggles for water in less hydraulically advanced cities, where fetching water was a laborious chore, and disease lurked in every stagnant pool. Rome's wetness was a distinguishing feature, a fundamental aspect of its identity that contributed immensely to the quality of life within its walls. The city breathed and flowed with water, a liquid lifeblood that was not just consumed but experienced, seen, heard, felt, and even smelled, shaping the very essence of what it meant to be a Roman citizen in the greatest city of the ancient world. It was a surprisingly complex world, indeed, one where water truly orchestrated the urban symphony. As the gentle murmur of our historical journey begins to fade, let us take a moment to reflect on the surprising complexity of ancient Roman plumbing. What began as a seemingly mundane topic, a discussion of pipes and drains, has, I hope, revealed itself to be a fascinating window into the very soul of a civilization. From the distant springs to the grand public spaces and the hidden depths beneath the streets, water was not merely a commodity for the Romans. It was an active participant in their story, shaping their society, their culture, and their enduring legacy. We began with the monumental achievement of the aqueducts, those vital arteries that brought life-giving water from afar, demonstrating an unparalleled mastery of surveying and construction, and defying gravity with their gentle, precise gradients. We saw how this abundant supply transformed Rome into a city of extraordinary hygiene and amenity, fueling the ubiquitous public fountains that served as vital communal hubs, and enabling the magnificent public baths, those sprawling social, economic, and hygienic centers that were unique in the ancient world. Our journey then took us beneath the streets, into the silent, often maligned depths of the Cloaca Maxima and its network of sewers. This sophisticated, if imperfect, waste removal system was crucial for maintaining public health in a densely populated urban environment, a testament to Roman pragmatism in sanitation. We also examined the nuanced reality of private water connections, a privilege for the elite, and delved into the intriguing, debated question of lead pipes, a technological marvel with unforeseen health implications that still sparks discussion today. We then explored the intricate administration and maintenance that kept this vast hydraulic machine running, highlighting the tireless efforts of the curator aquarium and the dedicated familia aquaria. Their constant vigilance against leaks, blockages, and rampant water theft underscores the immense value placed on this resource and the bureaucratic genius required to manage it. We even touched upon the water wars, the legal and illicit battles over access and control that highlight the power dynamics inherent in managing such a vital resource. Beyond utility, we considered water's profound cultural and symbolic significance. It was a muse for art, flowing through elaborate nymphea and private garden fountains. It was intertwined with religion and mythology, its sources often deemed sacred. And crucially, it shaped the very sensory landscape of Rome, filling the city with the soothing sounds of cascades and ensuring a level of cleanliness that distinguished it from virtually any other ancient urban center. Finally, we examined water as a source of power, driving the early industrialization of water mills and enabling the destructive, yet remarkably efficient, methods of hydraulic mining. We also reflected on the decline and rediscovery of Roman plumbing, its temporary regression in the Dark Ages, and its powerful influence on modern hydraulic engineering. And we contrasted Rome's integrated system with the water management of other great ancient civilizations, cementing its unique place in history. So, what are the enduring lessons from this surprisingly complex world of ancient Roman plumbing? Firstly, it is a testament to the power of long-term vision and sustained investment in public infrastructure. The Romans understood that the health, prosperity, and stability of their empire depended on robust, well-maintained foundational systems. Secondly, it highlights the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate aspects of society. Water management wasn't just engineering, it was public health policy, social stratification, legal administration, economic strategy, and cultural expression, all woven together. And thirdly, it reminds us that even the most boring or mundane aspects of history can hold the most profound insights. It is in the pipes, the drains, and the flow of water that we find a vibrant, living portrait of Roman ingenuity, their practical genius, and their remarkable ability to adapt and overcome environmental challenges on an unprecedented scale. The Roman hydraulic legacy, though often unseen beneath our modern cities or crumbling gently in the landscape, continues to flow. It teaches us about the ingenuity of our ancestors, the timeless challenges of urban living, and the enduring human need for clean, accessible water. So, as you drift off into the depths of historical reflection tonight, perhaps you might hear, faintly, the echoes of a Roman fountain, a testament to a civilization that truly understood the surprising power of something as simple, yet utterly vital as water. Sleep well, and thank you for joining me on this surprisingly complex journey through the history of Roman plumbing.